So I'm going to be talking to you guys about the flat earth model that I have put together out of the book of Enoch. But before we do, I wanted to explain really the reason why the book of Enoch is so attractive to me as a manuscript that was indeed inspired. And there's no other way to look at this. I mean, if you look at the calendar that's described and the way that I'm going to describe it based on the text of the calendar is a perfectly accurate calendar from a minimum of 2,300 years ago. And if we put the date of 2,300 years ago on it, it would have had to have been created at the time of the manuscripts that were put in the caves where we found the Book of Enoch and the Dead Sea Scrolls. So those scrolls are dated to that period of time. I believe the Book of Enoch is much older. There is absolutely zero Abrahamic influence in the Book of Enoch. Doesn't talk about any of the traditions of Abraham. This was a book that was written before the Book of Abraham, not just 2,300 years ago, and before the books of Moses. This was a book before the flood. So when we're looking at the story of Noah, that was the time, and even before that time was the time that Enoch was writing this, because Enoch was writing it and giving it to his son Methuselah. And when we're looking at the description of the sun moving through the sky throughout the year, that was based on the latitude of Methuselah and where Methuselah lived. And you could take that simple abacus map and you could move it across the surface depending on where you lived. If you lived far enough north, if you look at the regression of it, you would end up in a place where there is no sun part of the year. So we're going to be looking at the calendar in the Book of Enoch today. We're not going to really be talking about the model or anything like that, but the calendar is what's really profound. And in the Book of Enoch, it was more important to Enoch to keep the days of the week accurate with the year than anything else. So in the heliocentric model, equinox is going to be on the same 2 days of the year every year, right? The sun at equinox is going to be in the same position every year, year after year. And it's a little bit off. We have precession in the model. And I think if you look at the Book of Enoch, the calendar that's described here, that it actually eliminates it. And I'm not smart enough to think this all the way through. So there are people out there who are, though, and I want you to really think about what the Book of Enoch is saying. So if we look at the calendar in the heliocentric model, a year is 365.2425 solar days. So over the course of a year, you have a little bit more than 365 days. And what we do is we will add to the calendar every 4 years a leap year, where we're basically adding 1 day to the calendar every year. In the Book of Enoch, it worked a little different because it wasn't the goal of the calendar to align the sun. I planted my crops based on where the sun was, not what time of year it was. And this was important in astrological terms. And when we're thinking about astrology, we're not talking about the evil astrology that the Bible talks about, going to soothsayers and things like that. But the time of year you were born, when you were born, had a lot to do with what type of personality traits you would have, with what the weather was going to be like on that particular day based on the position of the stars and the latitude. It was like a giant sky abacus, right? So if you were born in July, if we think about a 364-day year, which we're going to reconcile, by the way, give me time, 364-day year, the sun is going to be in every position in every month at equinox over the course of about 300 years. So the sun is going to go all the way through the constellations every year, but it's also going to slowly precess based on the time. So think about this. If you're born in the month of July, and July in that particular month you were born at equinox, and your cousin was born, or your great aunt was born in the month of July, but it was closer to solstice, the way the calendar was aligned, then you would end up at a different alignment as far as your personality, depending on where you lived and things like that. You can accurately calculate it if you're rotating the sun through the calendar. The problem is it doesn't reconcile the rotation of the stars. There's no way to do that with the 364-day calendar. When you reconcile the sun that way, you can say, okay, the sun was designed to move this way, right? It was designed to go around in a circle throughout the year. The year was not designed to be equivalent to the sun, to make the sun equal, right? At equinox every year on March 21st, every year on September 22nd. That's not what the calendar in Enoch was designed to do. But you have to keep the rotation of the stars accurate. So if we look at in the calendar in Enoch, when we're progressing through the years, every 5 years we're going to accumulate 6 days. And we're going to add that 6 days in a separate calendar and accumulate those days until we progress to 1,092 days. So over about 910 years, you would have a progression where you would end up with the 1,092 days. Because remember, the important thing in Enoch is to keep the calendar congruent with the days of the week. On the first day, God said, let there be light, right? Those are the days of creation. But if we accumulate the days, we end up with 3 years of perfect 364 days. And we add that, so we're not accumulating, we're not progressing the years through that leap cycle of 3 years where we're basically stopping the progression to allow the sun and the stars to catch up with the calendar that is moving the sun, and it allows the sun to continue to move in that cycle, in that progression, but it perfectly aligns the stars, the sun, and the moon in 364 days. Explain to me how this was possible thousands of years ago.